very much for that wonderfully kind introduction. Sitting here for the last hour plus, you've brought tears to my eyes and you've made me laugh, so I feel like I'm among friends. And I, of course, was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Queens, Jackson Heights, 73rd Street and Northern Boulevard. So I'm very glad to be here, but I'm also glad to be anywhere where I get to finish a sentence without getting interrupted. The McLaughlin Group definitely is a food fight. You're expected to speak before you think, and interrupting each other, being generally rude, calling each other names is all considered part of good television today. And I like to think of myself in that group, which is oriented to the right, that I am the voice of reason. It's a pretty lonely place on the group, and it's an increasingly lonely place in our politics today. When you have venerable organizations like Planned Parenthood demonized, and you have media outlets that seem more eager to take sides than report the news, and the information the public gets is often only loosely tethered to facts, you can see the challenges that the pro-choice community faces. And to just recap some recent events, last week we saw the defeat of Senator Richard Lugar, one of the last remaining moderate voices in the Republican Party. And his challenger, Richard Murdoch, won on his claim that there is too much bipartisanship in Washington. And he also went after Lugar's votes to confirm two of Supreme Court justices nominated by President Obama, Sandra Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. You can take Lugar's concession statement and the remarks made by Olympia Snowe earlier this year when she decided she would not run again, put them side by side, and you can see the pressures facing politicians today, particularly moderate Republican politicians. Senator Lugar noted the futility of either party, Republican or Democrat, getting their way in Washington after the election when big decisions must be made about extending tax cuts, about facing budget sequestration. Those big issues cannot be decided by one party or the other because there's that little hurdle of getting 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. Senator Snowe expressed her frustration with demands of a party that really doesn't allow the kind of independence that made her an icon in Maine. So their loss, and particularly Lugar's loss and the fact that it turned so much on his votes for Supreme Court nominees, really will have a chilling effect on the next Congress. And if President Obama wins re-election, and it is an if, Peter Hart, respected Democratic pollster, sent out a memo to clients last week where he put the president's re-election at no better than 50-50, which made me realize that a lot of things can't be taken for granted in today's polarized political world. At the center of this election is the Supreme Court. I don't have to spell out to the people in this room how important it is to have a balance on the Supreme Court. President Obama is exceedingly proud, as well he should be, of the diversity he has helped bring the court with his two nominations. Will any Republican in the next Senate cast a vote for an Obama nominee after the way Lugar was skewered by Richard Murdoch? It is really a challenge to get somebody on the Supreme Court. And if Mitt Romney does win, I think if we look at the way he governed in Massachusetts, I think I would say he's not too far right to make reasonable appointments. But will his party let him? How much maneuvering room will he have? And I look at the co-chair of the Romney Justice Advisory Committee, and it's Robert Bork. I don't have to explain who Robert Bork is to people in this room. His defeat in 1987, when he failed to win confirmation in the Senate, he was a Reagan appointee, it was over his interpretation of privacy. And to bork is now a verb, and his defeat actually launched the politicization of Supreme Court justices. I think the fact that Romney has selected him shows Romney's continued need really to placate his most far-right base. And for progressives, it really sends the signal that this is an all-out war for the Supreme Court. Another element of our current political landscape was the fight that we all watched over insurance coverage of contraceptives in the Affordable Care Act. What a memorable day it was when Congress convened an all-male panel to discuss the issue. And bless her, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney said, "Where are the women?" Humorist Andy Borowitz had great fun with that. He did a column imagining an all-female panel discussing erectile dysfunction. We got a lot of laughs, too, over the Virginia legislature wanting to mandate transvaginal probes. Saturday Night Live's Amy Poehler said, "Transvaginal is my favorite airline." I have so many miles, I always get upgraded to lady business. It was a good thing when the issue morphed into pop culture, because the Virginia legislators were shamed and mocked, and they tweaked the bill a bit, but it still passed. And in Pennsylvania, where they're considering similar legislation, along with another Virginia-inspired bill to require that the hallways in reproductive services clinics be broadened and elevators be installed, which would mean that many of these clinics would be forced to close. That's being considered, along with the ultrasound legislation. The governor in Pennsylvania said that the legislation, which is currently tabled but may still spring to life, is on the outside and not the inside. I mean, that's the tweaking they did. And he said if women don't like it, they should just close their eyes. So this is the kind of atmosphere that has erupted around the country. And in Pennsylvania, there are only 12 reliably pro-choice votes out of 253 legislators. And in the current congressional session, they've taken 26 votes on reproductive measures in the Pennsylvania House and 8 in the Senate. And those are not to expand reproductive rights, they're to limit them. And parenthetically, there aren't enough women in office. Of the 203 House members in Pennsylvania, only 32 are women, and 11 of the 50 in the Senate are women. Not that all the women are pro-choice, but you have a better shot in a group of women to get a little bit more progressive attitudes on this issues. 26 states around the country have enacted one or more anti-choice measures since 2010, when the Republicans swept a lot of the state legislatures. And a lot of this is happening under the radar, but every so often something strikes a cultural nerve.